Hi again, it's Mike from Sundance. So today I'm going to go through an entire installation on a little demo unit that we have here in the shop. Now this is something that we use for training new dealers or even DIYers, so they can see how something goes together from start to finish. Now we have cheated a little bit here. For example, we have this ledger board put on already, which we explained in another video, but we've got 2 holes every 16 inches to put a lag into the stud of this wall. We've also got the brackets put on already that are going to go for our beams, and we've got our post mounts that you can see here. Now this represents something that we would typically do to reinforce underneath the deck. So obviously you don't want all the weight of the post to be sitting on top of just Trex or something like that. So what we have is we took some 2x8s, laid them flat side down, screwed them together. We're using some Simpson strong ties to hold it all together and to keep that area where the post is going to go nice and strong. Normally we would do 3 2x8s laying down, but with the constraints of the space we had, this is how it worked out. Anyways, we're going to go ahead and get putting this together. One more thing to mention is that you will see holes and dirt and other kind of stuff in this material. Like I said, this is a unit that we use to train people as they come in so they can see how it's put together. So it's already been put together and taken apart several times. But it's going to give you a good idea of what the whole process is start to finish. So the first place I would usually start is if this is a house mount system or a building mount system, would be on that ledger. So we've already done that. We measured out exactly where it's going to go. These are 3/4 inch holes that we punch in there. And you're going to have to do those on site just because we're not going to be able to tell where those studs are in the factory, obviously. But you do a 3/4 inch hole in the front, a 1/4 inch hole in the back, and we typically just use the headlock screws that you can get from Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever hardware store. Make sure you're getting at least 2.5 inches of engagement into the stud, which means that you're probably going to be looking at a 3 or 3.5 inch screw. Maybe depending on your siding, it might even be more. You might need a 4.5 inch screw. Anyways, so we're going to kind of fast forward through that process. That's done. So the next thing I would do would be set my posts. Now I've got my post mounts already set here. I've got my post right here, it's pre-notched. And the other thing that I've done is I've already mounted my drainage into the system. I'll go over that in a little bit when we get to that part. But you can see I've already got this drainage in there. I've got the outlet coming out. It's a little bit loose right now. Like I said, I'll go over what we do in a little bit. But I'm just going to mount that on top of my post mount. And then it's going to be 4 screws on each side of the post to lock it in. And we're going to use these truss head screws. They're a lot lower profile. They look a lot nicer than our hex head screws. So I'm going to put that in now. So I've got all the screws in the bottom of that post. You can see how it looks now. And we're going to move on. For the other post, I'm not going to put all the screws in just for time's sake on this video, but that'll take you just a couple of minutes on each post to put all those screws in. Again, it's 4 screws on each side. You can see how that looks right here. I'm going to get this other post on. And now the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to put my next beam on. Now this beam is my bearing beam, which means that the weight of the louvers is going to be on it. And so that's going to go all the way into this face of the post inside. You want that weight bearing side to get as much engagement into this post as we can. I'm going to put that on now. And again, I'm going to use those same truss head screws to make the outside finish look nice. This is a T30 bit, by the way. Now with that beam on, as you can see, it's coming all the way into the corner of this post. Now I'm going to put on my other 2 posts to finish the outside frame. These posts in this instance really aren't carrying any weight, they're really just tying everything together. Since all the weight of the louvers, and therefore anything that's on top of the louvers, the snow or whatever, is going to be really carried by that beam on the ledger and this beam here. So we're going to put 4 screws on this side just like we did on this side. Now, you might notice that 2 of the screws on this side are really only going into the hollow of the beam here, that they're not really grabbing anything. Really, we do that just for aesthetics. We found that when we put just 2 screws on the outside, like it's called out in the engineering, customers would ask, well, why is there only 2 screws and not 4 screws? So most people like just to see the symmetry there. So we go ahead and put all 4 screws in, even though 2 are really not going to do anything. Now as I'm doing this, I got to get over this bracket that's going to hold all the beams together. Same thing on this side. You see I already have a gutter corner on here. That is not what, you wouldn't normally have that gutter corner on there. Like I said, this has been put together a few times and taken apart. And that's just kind of stuck on there at this point. We're going to do the same thing. Put it in here, drop it in place, and put our screws in. And then over here on the outside, where the bracket is, I'm going to put 3 screws. And now all of our beams are up for this system. So that's gone pretty quick. Obviously there's a lot of stuff prepared here. But the next thing we want to do is get the gutter and drainage in place. So that's what we're going to do next. So we're going to put the corners in first. We're going to put a corner piece in each corner. They look like this. And that corner piece, or the gutter, is going to slide into this corner piece, and it's going to butt up against this edge here. You might end up with a little bit of a gap, but that's not a problem. You just don't want it to be overlapping on top of this slab. That makes it easier, creates some gaps and makes it easier for leaks to get through. So I've also pre-cut a hole for our drainage. You saw that pipe I put in earlier. So the pipe is going to come up through here. It's just barely going to sit above the surface of this. And then we're going to caulk around that to seal it up so all that water goes through the pipe, stays out of the post itself, just through the pipe and out the front. So I'm going to get those screwed in now. And now on these ones, we're going to use our 3/8 hex head bits screws because they're a little bit easier to deal with, and all of these screws that I'm going to put in now are going to be hidden. You're not going to be able to see them from anywhere outside of the system, so it's just easier to use the hex heads. It's a 3/8 inch nut driver that you need. Now my drill, you're going to want an extension on your drill with that 3/8 inch bit to get it in there easily. It's going to be kind of hard to get your drill into some of these spots without an extension on there. I'm going to get those all in now. Now as you can see in this photo, I will normally prep these corners to get sealed in this way. Putting caulk around the back side of the flap, and then also putting it down here where the gutter is going to end up sitting. Now where the gutter is going to end up sitting, you can wait until right before you put the gutter on. In this case, we're doing it a little bit ahead of time because this is going to go quickly for me. gutter corner goes over on this side. Normally, obviously, it wouldn't matter, but in this case where we already have all the holes drilled, I'm going to move it back to where it was before. Now, one thing to note with the placement of these is that I want the top of that shelf where the gutter is going to sit to be flush with the bottom of the beam, because we want our gutter, the bottom of our gutter, to be flush with the bottom of the beam to give it a nice clean look. So this gutter corner piece is actually going to hang down just a hair. About a 1/16 of an inch is the width of that, or the thickness of that material. Bump my table a little bit there. Okay. Now the next thing we're going to do is put in all of our gutters. So again, that gutter is going to butt into the flaps on the back side of those corner pieces. You do not want them overlapping that flap. And all I've got to do, I'm going to slide one end in. I'm going to pull out this flap on the front part so that I can drop the other side in. And again, I'm going to use these 3/8 head, these number 14 screws. I'm going to go in the back wall. I'm going to make sure that the bottom of my gutter is flush with the bottom of this beam. Now, one thing I'll note that most of you will notice that I'm using a regular drill, not an impact. I prefer not to use the impact. A lot of people like them though. Biggest thing you got to be careful of is if you get too crazy with that impact, it's going to strip out these screws and then they become more or less worthless. Another thing of note as you do this is that frequently when the screw goes into the gutter, it'll actually suck it down about a 1/16 of an inch. So I typically, as I'm holding the gutter in place, I'll actually keep it just a hair high so that that screw will suck it down. Now these screws that you're putting into the gutter are you're gonna put them in about every 2 feet. Okay. Now what I'll do is where this flap on the gutter is, on the gutter corner piece I should say, I'm going to screw that through the top and into the gutter itself, and that's going to hold everything nice and tight. And I'm using these smaller truss head screws to do it so that I make sure that I don't have any interference with my louvers. Also for visuals, so the customer doesn't have to see a couple hex heads sticking up in the corner. So while you're doing it, you're going to want to pinch these together. Just like that. You're going to go around and do that on all four corners. I'm going to do it on one more corner, just for illustration purposes. Okay. Now I'm going to show you what I typically do to seal the gutter and the corner pieces as well. I'm going to use, even though this is a bronze frame and you would normally obviously use bronze caulking on there, I'm using this Adobe caulking just to give contrast and show where I'm putting the caulking and what I'm doing. So first I'm going to go along the top here. And you can see some residual caulking from previous assemblies. Make sure that I am going to push that in and get a seal on it. Okay. Now I'm going to go around these seams as well.